Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. Autumn harvest always looked like a postcard somebody forgot to take down after October. Porch lights were amber halos, paper skeletons swayed in drafty windows, plastic ghosts rattled on fishing line, bumping softly against aluminum siding like they were trying to get in. The air smelled like damp leaves and cider, the way it always did when the town dipped into its favorite month and refused to come back out. They were cutting through Main Street because that's what you did when you were young and didn't want to go home yet. Candy-led, chewing candy corn like it was a dare, her boots scuffing leaves into bright confetti. Frank shadow-boxed at low-hanging cobwebs and pretended he wasn't cold. Inca walked a little apart, black nails and wool sleeves, drawing ideas on the fog of her breath. Crypt kept pace with a slouch that said he didn't care about anything, except he noticed everything. Grim brought up the rear, keeping the orbit steady, the way you guard a candle with your palm when the wind comes. They turned the corner at the barber shop, and every one of them stopped. A store was wedged between Jakey's Hardware and the pharmacy where there had never been a gap, not a new store. A store like it had been sealed behind a wall and just slid forward. A black-painted doorway and a slender bay window, the glass slightly wavy, old world, like looking at Main Street through water. Above the door, a hand-lettered sign in ivory script, the collector's closet. Below that, in smaller paint, neat as a teacher's, open at dusk. It wasn't here yesterday, Crypt said, which was true and useless. Candy tipped her chin, trying to see the trick. Someone finally gentrified a void. Frank pressed his face to the glass and flinched back with a laugh that didn't sound brave. Oof, okay, that's masks, like a lot. It was more than a lot. The window display was a still life of faces, wolves with wet-looking gums, a grinning carnival clown whose smile sagged like taffy, a plague doctor beak glossy and long, a queen's porcelain half mask cracked across the eye. Every eye hole was black, every mouth held its last expression like a secret. The price tags dangled on thread-thin strings, little paper tombstones. The closed sign flipped itself. No hand, no clerk. 1 second, closed in tidy serif, the next, open, and the bell over the door chimed once, softly like a throat clearing. Don't, Grim said, automatically. Relax, Candy countered, exactly as automatically. Inca leaned toward the glass again, her breath fogging a halo that turned to frost and then cleared. They're beautiful. She didn't mean pretty, she meant precise. The wolf's fur looked like it would lift in a wind, the clown's rubbery skin held faint pores. A yellowed paper tag winked in the corner of the display, authentic, one of a kind, fits like a second soul. Crypt snorted. Gross copy. Frank grinned because he didn't know how not to. Second soul is just what you need, Candy. Double the snark. Candy flicked him a piece of candy corn. It hit his jacket and fell to the ground point first, sticking upright in a crack between the sidewalk slabs like a tiny warning. The door gave when Candy pushed it. The bell chimed again, closer this time, like something right next to your ear. A draft slid out. dust, old wood, wax, and a faint score of something sweeter beneath, like rotting apples trying to pass for perfume. Inside, the shop was longer than physics allowed, a narrow throat of room that kept going and going into a warm, lamplit hush. Masks hung from pegs and crowded shelves and lined up along a rail like patient commuters. Some were museum pieces, others were wrong in a way you only felt after you looked too long. A child's face on an adult's scale, a deer with teeth too human, a harlequin whose diamond pattern kept almost making a word if you tracked it across the cheek and gave up before it finished telling you. They stepped in as a unit without meaning to, the way you step across a threshold into a church. The door got most of the daylight and let the rest spill down the aisle like thin milk. The floorboards were old and soft with a kind of polished wear you get from generations of shoes. The register was a brass beast with round keys. A rotary phone sat beside it, receiver slightly off the cradle, as if someone had set it down mid-sentence. "Hello?" Grim called, because somebody had to talk to a human. A shape unhooked itself from the shadow behind the counter and smoothed forward. An old man, frail, waxy skin that shone a little too evenly, like candlelight had taught it how to behave. His suit was charcoal and sleek, ageless. His smile was the kind that fit his face until it didn't, widening one notch too far and then stopping on command. "Welcome," he said, and the word had a well-oiled hinge. "Dusk finds my best customers." Inca whispered, "Collector," under her breath, because sometimes names introduce themselves. He inclined his head just enough to be polite. "You may call me that." Candy's eyes went back to the masks even while her mouth kept the banter moving. "We were just looking." "That is what looking is for," the old man said. His eyes were bright glass marbles, blue but candle blue, the color flames go when they forget they're warm. Frank drifted to a pegboard wall where a dozen faces waited like promises. "These move?" He said it as a joke, but the clown's lip had twitched when he looked away, a tremor a person might make while trying to hold still for a photograph. "Only when asked," the collector said. Grim touched Candy's sleeve, small and firm, enough that she glanced down and then up, back into the aisle, where an aisle shouldn't keep going but did. The light at the back pulsed like a heartbeat. Every time the bell over the door made the tiniest settling sound, the masks answered with a hush of their own, the whisper of fabric, the almost sound you hear when many things agree to be quiet together. Crip drifted toward a mirror framed in black wood carved with grapes and snakes and leaves. His reflection dragged by a half-second, catching up like a VHS tape that had been paused too long. For a blink, the mirror showed his face with a small crack through the eyebrow. When he blinked again, the crack was in the glass, not him, and then it wasn't anywhere at all. "Vintage," Crip muttered and didn't look again. Inca reached for a wolf, then stopped herself mid-reach, letting her hand hover above the fur. The mask seemed to exhale, not a sound, but a soft ripple, a ghost of movement, like wind through tall grass. "They're lifelike," she said. "They are alive-like," the collector corrected gently. Candy smiled with all her teeth. "And what happens if one actually fits like a second soul?" The collector's smile thought about widening and then did not. "Then you have found your face." The phone at the counter ticked once, the little metal piece by the cradle trembling. Outside, Main Street went by in soft shapes. The The druggist flipping his sign, the barber sweeping hair into a dustpan, Mrs. Keene arguing with her dog. Inside, time got thick. Grim checked the clock over the door. The hand said 7 o'clock, but the second hand wasn't moving. It was just thinking. Frank, because he couldn't help himself, stretched his arm toward a mask shaped like a jester's grin. He didn't touch it. He let his fingers hover a breath away. The grin lifted one tooth, just one, like a secret, like a dare. "Guys," Grim said, not loud. Maybe we're shopping," Candy said, but her voice had gone lower, like she understood they were already on the far side of a line. The collector folded his hands, skin candle smooth over knuckles like carved ivory. "You have come on the right night," he said. "Tomorrow is unkind to indecision." The bell over the door chimed a third time with nobody touching it, and the aisle's lamplight pressed 1 degree warmer, 1 degree closer, as if it wanted them to see better, as if it wanted them to choose. Candy took a step. The masks breathed again. And something in the back of the shop, behind the pulsing light, behind the rows of faces, smiled without a mouth. The collector's closet clung to them even after they left. The smell of wax and dust hung in their clothes like smoke from a fire they hadn't built. They spilled back onto Main Street with that nervous laughter that follows a brush too close to something you can't explain. "Never again," Grim muttered, tugging his jacket tighter. Candy tossed another candy corn into her mouth and crunched loud enough to cover her nerves. "Please, it's just a gimmick shop, old dude with party store stock and an ego problem." Frank snapped his gum, eyes darting back over his shoulder. "Yeah, well, his ego problem winked at me." Crypt grinned without warmth. "Sure. You're just mad you couldn't tell if the clown had better teeth than you." "Ha ha," Frank shot back. "Hilarious." Inca was the only one who stayed quiet, her gaze fixed on the shop window they'd just escaped. The masks were still there, lined like soldiers. She thought one turned its head just as the door swung shut. Thought, but didn't say. By the next afternoon, the whole town knew. Kids whispered in the school hallways about the new place, the one that seemed like it had always been there. Someone swore the mayor himself had bought a mask. The collector's closet was the only storefront buzzing louder than the arcade, and that was saying something. That night, the 5 of them lingered again on Main Street, caught in the stream of kids filing toward the glowing doorway. The bell chimed and chimed and chimed, never pausing, as if the shop had grown hungry for every sound it could eat. Frank, of course, cracked first. He elbowed Candy. "Bet you won't try one on." Candy wrinkled her nose. "Bet I won't waste my brain cells humoring you." The challenge hung between them anyway, heavier than the October air. Before Candy could retort again, a boy from their chemistry class, Eddie Marks, swept past them and ducked inside, all swagger and cheap cologne. "Fine," Candy said, hands on her hips. "Watch this idiot prove my point." The collector greeted Eddie with the same waxy smile, the same folded hands. The teens slipped inside after him, trying to look casual, but the shop already seemed fuller, the walls lined deeper with faces. Eddie scanned the pegs like he was picking sneakers. "What's the scariest one you got?" The collector tilted his head, candle flame eyes gleaming. Scary is relative. His hand hovered over a grotesque thing with sagging cheeks and hollow eyes before settling on something simpler, a pale, grinning face with lips too wide. He lowered it from the peg with reverence. "Perfect fit," he said. Eddie laughed. Yeah. He slid the mask over his head. The bell rang. At first it was funny. The mask suctioned with a comic little schlup, and Eddie wobbled like he was stuck. He tugged at the edges. Hey, glue much?" Candy smirked. "Told you." But the smirk wilted when Eddie's laughter pitched into a strained sound. His fingers dug at the seams, nails raking skin. The mask flexed, not rubber, not plastic, something else. It pulsed against his face like it was breathing. Crypt swore under his breath. Grim lunged forward, grabbing Eddie's wrist. "Stop fighting it." Too late. Eddie's eyes bulged, the whites webbed with crimson. The mask rippled, veins rising beneath its smooth surface. His voice fractured through the grin. "I can't get it off." The collector's smile deepened, youth bleeding back into his skin in subtle strokes. Inca whispered, "It's changing him." And it was. Eddie's jaw unhinged wider than it should, teeth sharpening, cheekbones distorting as if clay hands were sculpting him from the inside. The mask wasn't covering his face anymore. It was his face. The friends backed away in unison, the bell tolling once more like a warning. Outside, Main Street went on glowing, unaware. Inside, the collector spread his hands as though revealing a magic trick. "See," he said softly. "He's found his true self." Eddie lifted his head, eyes now bottomless black. And when he smiled, it was with the mask's grin. By October 30th, Autumn Harvest had gone mask mad. Everywhere they looked, faces didn't match the voices spilling out of them. Teachers with too wide smiles, store clerks with eyes that didn't blink often enough, kids at the diner giggling through grins that looked glued in place. The sidewalks were a parade of plastic and latex and something else. At first, it had seemed like a fad. The collector's closet had only been open a few nights, but by the third, the shop ran out of stock before midnight. Every evening, a line stretched down Main Street, shuffling feet and eager chatter. People wanted to be seen in their new faces, wanted to belong to whatever was happening. Candy watched it unravel with her arms crossed tight. Whole town's lost its mind. You'd think these people had never heard of costumes before. Frank tossed a French fry in his mouth and shrugged. Halloween fever happens every year, except this time the fever's contagious. Inca pressed her chin into her palm, sketchpad open on the diner counter. She had drawn 3 masks already without realizing it. A wolf, a clown, and the pale grin Eddie had vanished behind. It's not just costumes. It's obsession. They're treating them like relics. Crypt stabbed at his milkshake with a straw. Relics don't twitch when you're not looking. "Stop," Grim said, pushing his plate away. "We all saw Eddie. This isn't funny." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the jukebox clicking to the next track. That night, they walked Main Street again, hoping for proof that what they'd seen was just stress and bad lighting. Instead, they saw the collector standing outside his shop, younger than before. His spine no longer stooped, his skin stretched taut and healthy, though still candle smooth, like wax refusing to age. He welcomed each customer with that smile that didn't quite stop where it should. The bell over the door never rested, ding, 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 a constant metronome. Inside the diner window, Mrs. Keene sipped coffee behind a porcelain mask with painted roses, her fingers trembling as if fighting to remember how to hold the cup. The mayor strolled past in a beastly snout, his voice booming in a speech about community spirit, though the words slurred through teeth that weren't his. Frank muttered, "It's like a plague, but no one wants a cure." They lingered too long. The collector's gaze slid across the street, catching them where they stood. His eyes glowed faintly under the lamplight, twin blue embers. He raised one hand in greeting, two fingers extended, like a priest blessing a congregation. The five froze. Candy forced a smirk to cover the shiver up her spine. Great, we're on his VIP list. The moment broke when the shop's door slammed itself shut, bell ringing sharp. The line outside groaned, but no one questioned it. They waited, patient as sheep, as if the store would reopen when the collector decided. By morning, Eddie was gone. His parents swore he was sleeping at a friend's house. Teachers didn't mark him absent. The town smoothed his absence into silence, as though he had never existed. That was when the Friends' new autumn harvest wasn't just celebrating Halloween, it was being rewritten by it. And with every mask sold, the collector grew stronger. Autumn harvest no longer belonged to itself. By the morning of Halloween, Main Street was a carnival of strangers wearing the skins of people they used to know. Pumpkins sagged on porches, their carved faces somehow more human than the ones smiling in the street. Decorations blinked in windows while families posed for pictures in masks that had fused to their skin overnight. The town felt like it had been hollowed out and refilled with something wrong. The five met in Grimm's garage, door shut tight, the air sharp with gasoline and damp leaves. Candy paced, hands clenched around a half-empty bag of candy corn. Frank sat on a workbench, making jokes under his breath that died before they reached the air. Inca drew again, sketches of the shopkeeper morphing into younger versions of himself with every page. Crypt leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching shadows as if they might twitch. Grimm oiled the handle of a baseball bat, his jaw tight. "He's feeding," Inca whispered finally, pencil digging grooves into paper. Every mask sold, every face changed. He's siphoning life. Look at him. He's not old anymore. Candy stopped pacing. "So, he's what? A vampire with a Party City franchise?" "Not funny," Grimm said, but his mouth twitched like he wanted it to be. Frank rubbed his face. "Doesn't matter what he is, he's turning people into them, and nobody even cares. They're happy about it." Crypt's voice cut sharp. "They're not happy. They're gone. The masks are steering now." They went back to Main Street that afternoon. not because they wanted to, but because they couldn't stay away. The collector's closet glowed brighter than ever, lanterns burning in the windows. The line outside was longer, winding around the block. Inside, the collector no longer looked frail. His hair gleamed dark, his back straight, his movements smooth. The wrinkles had ironed themselves out of his face. His suit was crisp, tailored like it had been sewn onto him. He stood behind the counter as if on stage, basking in applause only he could hear. "Welcome," he told the crowd, voice smooth as silk. "Tonight we celebrate not disguise, but truth. For so long you have hidden behind your dull human masks. Now you may choose who you were always meant to be." The shop erupted in cheers. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders. Teens surged toward the racks. The bell over the door never stopped, its chime blending into a heartbeat rhythm that thrummed in the walls. The five slipped in among them, trying not to be seen. The masks seemed to notice anyway, their eyes glimmering faintly as if tracking them down the aisles. Candy whispered, "This isn't selling anymore. It's recruiting." The collector's gaze found her in the crowd. His smile stretched wider, almost human, almost not. "Ah, my favorites. Still undecided, but don't worry. By midnight, indecision won't exist." He lifted something from beneath the counter wrapped in black cloth. Even from across the room, they felt the weight of it, the way the air thickened when he held it up. "This," he said, voice swelling, "is my masterpiece. A mask to crown the new age. The mirror mask. For the ones who cannot choose, it will choose for them." The cloth slipped away. Beneath was a face that wasn't a face, polished silver, smooth as water, reflecting not their faces, but something deeper, darker. For a moment, Candy saw her reflection screaming, though her real mouth stayed shut. Inca saw herself cloaked in feathers, eyes black voids. Grim saw his own skin cracked like porcelain. The collector cradled it like a newborn. When midnight comes, all masks become permanent, the town reborn, and those who resist, well. His smile hardened. No one resists for long. The crowd applauded, clapping with hands that looked too stiff, too wrong. The shop filled with sound. The bell rang louder, faster, keeping time with a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. And in that moment, the five friends understood. If they didn't stop him before midnight, Autumn Harvest wouldn't just lose Halloween. It would lose itself forever. Halloween night bled into Autumn Harvest like a wound that wouldn't close. Pumpkins glowed on porches, their candlelight throbbing like feverish eyes. The streets were rivers of children and parents, costumes writhing, candy buckets swinging. But under every mask, too many of them weren't costumes anymore. They were faces, locked, living, hungry. By 9 o'clock, the town tipped into madness. The first scream came from outside the diner. A boy dressed as a cowboy stumbled into the street, clutching his face. The mask he'd bought, simple, plastic-looking, a monster grin, tightened like a vice. His jaw cracked, his scream warped into a howl that made glass rattle. Then he lunged at his own father, sinking sharpened teeth into flesh. It spread like fire. Everywhere masks twitched and pulsed, taking over. Parents dropped candy bags and bent in half, bones snapping into new shapes. Kids tore off their masks, only to find skin came with them. A clown face melted onto a cheerleader's skull, her laughter high and jagged as she turned on her friends. The streets erupted, shrieks and growls and tearing. Porch lights blinked out one by one, as though the town itself couldn't bear to watch. The five ran, through chaos, through bodies colliding, through the nightmare Main Street had become. Grim swung his bat at a creature with a porcelain doll's face, shattering cheek and jaw into powder. Candy hurled a pumpkin through a shop window, glass slicing a mask wearer's arm before he could grab Inca. Frank laughed too loudly, the sound half hysterical, as he jabbed a broken broomstick into a wolf-headed neighbor. Crip shouted curses at every turn, voice cracking, but still sharp enough to keep him grounded. Inca clutched her sketchbook even while sprinting, as if drawing what she saw was the only way to make sense of it. She couldn't stop sketching in her mind, the collector's closet glowing like a beacon at the center of the storm. They ducked into an alley, backs pressed to the wall, chests heaving. "This isn't a fad," Grim rasped. "It's a massacre." "No kidding," Candy spat, wiping blood from her knuckles. "We've got a town full of monsters and no idea how to stop them." Frank's laugh trembled. "Correction, we know exactly how to stop them. We kill the creep running the shop." Inca nodded, eyes glassy. "Before midnight, that's when everything locks. If we miss it..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The sounds of carnage pressed in around them, screams breaking, claws scraping pavement, the bell of the shop ringing over and over like a countdown. Crypt slammed his fist against the wall. "Then what are we waiting for?" They broke from the alley and into the chaos again. Main Street was burning now, flames licking at banners strung between lampposts, smoke curling into the autumn sky. Creatures moved in packs, tearing down doors, howling with their new voices. At the end of it all, the collector's closet pulsed with warm, golden light, too steady, too wrong, as though it were the heart of everything. The bell tolled again, a slow, final note that vibrated in their bones. The five friends tightened together, bruised and breathless, weapons clutched in trembling hands. Candy said what they were all thinking. Time to cut the strings. And then they ran for the shop. The collector's closet loomed ahead, its lantern glow spilling like molten gold across the cracked sidewalk. The rest of Main Street burned, screams and howls swallowed by fire, but the shop looked untouched, perfect, waiting. The bell tolled slow and steady, keeping time with their pounding feet. Inside, the aisles were alive. Masks no longer hung still on their pegs. They turned in unison as the five stepped through the door, eye holes gaping black, mouths stretching wider than before, cloth straps lashed out like tongues, snapping in the air, eager for new faces. The friends pushed deeper, boots scuffing soft floorboards that seemed to pulse beneath them. "Midnight," Inca whispered, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. "We have less than an hour." The collector emerged from the back like an actor hitting his cue. He wasn't old anymore, not frail. His youth had ripened into something uncanny, smooth skin stretched too tight, eyes burning candle blue, suit gleaming like it had been spun from night itself. He carried no cane now, he didn't need one. "My little stragglers," he purred. still clinging to borrowed faces. "Don't you see how heavy they are?" Candy spat a shard of candy corn at his feet. "I like my face just fine, thanks." The collector's smile sharpened. "You say that now, but the mirror mask knows better." He gestured, and the shelves shook. Masks flew from their hooks like birds loosed from a cage. A storm of faces whirled through the air, snapping at them, snarling, fangs flashing. Grim swung his bat, cracking one mask clean in half. It shattered with a scream like breaking bone. Frank ducked low, snatching a lantern from a shelf and smashing it into another mask, fire licking at its rubber skin. Crypt grabbed a fallen plank and used it like a club, smashing faces into pulp. Inka froze, sketchbook trembling in her hands. She could see it, each mask twitching, as though her pencil had drawn them alive. "They're feeding on fear," she whispered. "Don't give them what they want." But fear was impossible to avoid. The masks shrieked louder, circling, choking the air with wax and smoke. At the back of the shop, behind the frenzy, the mirror mask gleamed on a pedestal, silver, smooth, reflecting the flames, reflecting them, and for a moment each of them saw their darkest version staring back. Candy's reflection licked blood from its lips. Frank's was faceless, empty sockets grinning. Inka's wore feathers and claws. Crypt's mouth was sewn shut. Grim's skin cracked like porcelain. The collector spread his arms wide. "Choose your truth, children. Midnight comes, whether you wish it or not." The bell tolled again, louder, deeper, echoing through their bones. Candy grabbed Grim's wrist, pulling him forward. "We end this. Now." The five charged together through the storm of screaming faces toward the collector and the mask that waited for them like a trap. The collector's closet roared around them, masks shrieking, shelves rattling, the bell hammering faster and faster like a countdown to the end. Midnight pressed close, thick in the air, every second dripping heavier than the last. The mirror mask gleamed on its pedestal, silver and smooth, reflecting not what they were, but what they feared becoming. Its glow cut through the smoke and fire, pulling at them like a tide. The collector stepped aside, hands raised in triumph. His eyes burned blue, brighter than any lantern. "The final face," he said softly, "is always the truest." The friends broke through the storm together. Grim swung his bat until his shoulders ached, cracking snarling masks from the air. Candy shoved a shelf into the path of lunging faces, pinning them under splintered wood. Frank kicked the register off the counter, the brass beast smashing into fragments of porcelain grins. Crypt cursed and swung wildly, every strike cracking bone, shattering teeth. Inka clutched her sketchbook, whispering under her breath as though willing the nightmare onto paper instead of into reality. But the mirror mask pulled harder. Every step closer, it showed them worse. Candy saw herself standing over her friends, their faces gone, hers split into a grin too wide. Frank saw himself laughing into the void. No eyes, no skin, just endless teeth. Inka's reflection wore a crown of feathers, claws sinking into her sketchbook like prey. Crypt's was silent, stitched mouth weeping blood. Grim's cracked reflection whispered, "Break, break, break," over and over. They faltered just for a breath. That's all the collector needed. He snatched the mirror mask from its pedestal and held it aloft. The shop erupted in light, silver spilling over the aisles, burning into their eyes. the collector's voice boomed, smooth and terrible. Choose or be chosen. The bell tolled midnight. Candy lunged first, grabbing for the mask. The collector twisted away, impossibly quick, but Frank slammed into his side, knocking him against the counter. Grim's bat cracked across his arm, and for the first time, the collector screamed, not a word, but a howl that shook the shelves. The mirror mask slipped from his grip, spinning, clattering across the floor. Silver light pulsed with every bounce. Inca dove. She caught it in both hands, and for a heartbeat she froze. Her reflection filled the mask. Not feathers, not claws. Just herself, eyes wide, mouth trembling. The mask whispered in her head, soft as a lullaby. Wear me, see your truth, save them. Her knees buckled, she almost raised it. Drop it, Grim shouted, voice cracking. Inca's breath hitched, tears stung her eyes. Then she hurled the mask onto the floor with all her strength. Crypt was there in an instant, stomping down with his boot. Frank joined, then Candy, then Grim. Together, their blows cracked it, fractured it, shattered it into shards that scattered across the burning boards. The collector screamed again, this time collapsing, his body shriveling, skin melting wax-like into smoke. The shop shook, walls bowing inward, shelves crashing down. Masks fell lifeless, deflated rubber and porcelain and cloth littering the ground. The bell tolled one last time, flat, broken. They burst into the street as the collector's closet collapsed behind them. The building folded into itself like paper burning in reverse, until nothing remained but an empty gap between the barber shop and the pharmacy, as though it had never been there at all. The town was quiet. Masks lay abandoned on the pavement, limp and harmless. Survivors staggered out of homes and shops, faces pale, dazed, some weeping, some silent. Children clutched their parents as though unsure they were really themselves again. Autumn Harvest stood scarred. Candy dropped onto the curb, sweaty and bloodied, shoving candy corn into her mouth like medicine. Well, happy freaking Halloween. Frank laughed, raw and broken. Best party ever. Inca hugged her sketchbook tight, refusing to open it. Crypt sat with his back to a lamppost, staring at the sky like he didn't trust it. Grim leaned on his bat, shoulders heaving, eyes scanning the survivors as if waiting for something worse. And maybe he was right. Because whispers were already spreading. That some who had worn the masks still didn't act quite right, that their smiles lingered too long, their eyes blinked too slow. That maybe the masks hadn't come off completely. The collector was gone, but the town would never be the same. Autumn Harvest belonged to Halloween now. Forever.